Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I thank you for the opportunity today to address this 63rd annual gathering of the Assembly at such a critical moment in the history of my own country and that of the United Nations. Sometimes the most extreme tests of this institution's towering ideals arise in small, faraway places of which we know very little. I come to you as a representative of one of those places, the country of Georgia, a land of fewer than 5 million. The last month was invaded by our neighbor. Despite our small size, the legal, moral, and political and security implications raised by that invasion could not be larger in consequence. Indeed, those issues cut through to the heart of the UN's founding charter. The principles enshrined in that charter included the inviolability of sovereign borders, the sanctity of human rights, the supremacy of international law, and the global rejection of armed aggression. All of these principles were put to the test by the invasion and now hang in balance. The invasion violated Georgia's internationally recognized borders. At the very beginning of this aggression, we clearly told our own people and told the world that Georgia's people's spirit will not be broken, we will never give up freedom, and we will never surrender. We never did, and we never will. The subsequent recognition, in order to punish our country and send signal to the rest of the world, of the so-called independence of our two regions, of South Ossetia, with the population in the areas that Russia controlled of less than 20,000 people, and Abkhazia, with a population of less than 50,000 ethnic Abkhaz, challenged our territorial integrity, but also defied common sense and elementary principles of international interaction. The ethnic cleansing of hundreds of thousands of our people did violate the very idea of human rights. This General Assembly, therefore, faces a general challenge. We are called upon not just to respond to the particular question of one instance of armed aggression in a single place, but to define our attitude towards armed aggression in all places. We are called upon to answer the momentous questions. Will this body stand up for its founding principles, or will it allow them to be crushed under the treads of invading tanks, under the boots of ethnic cleansers, under the immobilizing impact of cyber attacks, and under the pernicious tactics of violent separatism? What would it mean for every member of this Assembly to defend the underlying principles of the United Nations? First, we must each refuse to stand silent in the face of this armed aggression and assault on human rights. Second, we must stand united and immediately adopt a non-recognition policy toward Georgia's two breakaway provinces right now occupied and being annexed by the aggressor. Together, we have both a moral and a legal obligation to protect international law and world order. Third, we must ensure that all parties comply with the full terms of the existing ceasefire agreement. And fourth, we must resolve to create a meaningful UN conflict resolution process that will peacefully reunify Georgia and solve the problems. The bottom line is this: we must be ready to use the full power of international law and of our collective international institutions to uphold the historic balance of justice, and thus set in motion a series of actions to right these historic wrongs. While the crisis poses grave challenges for the entire international community, it creates specific obligations on my own country. I want to argue that the answer to this new assault on our shared values is not a closing up, not a circling of the wagons, but rather a greater openness on many fronts. As a democracy, we have nothing to fear. As a democracy, we have an obligation to our people and to the international community to be even more open and transparent. For me, and my government. This commitment translates into a series of specific actions on both international and domestic levels. Allow me to explain. First, I know that there are many people in the world who seek a clear understanding of how this war started and who started it. Rather than recite our case, let me repeat a simple invitation that I first made on August 17 when I was standing next to Chancellor Merkel, who visited Georgia in the wake after this, immediately after the unleashing of hostilities, when I offered there should be an exhaustive, independent investigation of the origins and causes of this war. Investigations must have unimpeded access to all officials, documents, and intelligence. Georgia welcomes such an investigation. My government is ready to share every piece of evidence and provide access to every witness sought by investigation. We call on the other party to this conflict to fully cooperate and not obstruct this investigation. This is how democracies behave. This truth must come out not only to clarify how events unfolded last month, but to help us answer the fundamental question that this invasion has raised. My government's second initiative of openness involves developments within our borders. Whereas others wage this war with arms, we will wage it with values. Georgia was attacked because it is a successful democracy. It is our part of the world. In our part of the world, our response today is to make our democracy even more robust. That is why I am announcing to you 4 categories of expanded democratic initiatives. First, we will strengthen the checks and balances of our democratic institutions, including granting greater independence to Parliament and to the judiciary. Second, we will provide additional resources and protections to foster greater political pluralism, including by increasing funding for opposition parties, ensuring that they have greater access to the airwaves. Third, we will strengthen the rule of law by introducing enhanced due process, trials by jury, and lifetime judicial appointments. Fourth, we will expand and deepen protections of private property. And in everything we do, we will be transparent. This morning, I was honored to learn that in Transparency International's latest index, Georgia was one of few countries that have risen significantly in the rankings over the past year. Indeed, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development ranks Georgia among 3 least corrupt economies in Europe. Despite all the turmoil my country has endured, this proves the resiliency and irreversibility of our democratic commitment. We will, in short, fight the spectre of aggression and authoritarianism with the most potent weapons in our arsenal, namely our commitment to our expanding freedoms within our own borders. This amounts to nothing less than a second Rose Revolution.